hobby family? It is your boy K-Dub, and this is K-Dub's High Five, 5 rapid-fire questions with your favorite hobby faces. And today we switch the gears a little bit from hobby faces to social media faces as I bring in my good friend and fellow Skull brother, the Vikings Twitter account to follow, Jason Harmon at Jason777. There's some underscores in there, and I will make sure to link that in the description. How are you doing, my friend?
Good. I also just realized that my wife had logged in on Zoom and it says her name on here. So maybe I could edit that real quick because I was like,
Fair
my
enough.
name is definitely not Jennifer. But I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited. There we go. I figured out how to do it. Let me fix that. That's awkward. Solid start. This is what we did get for recording on a 3-day weekend, I guess.
That is all good, my friend. No worries, no worries. I didn't even notice. There we are. There we are. Jason.
There we go. Now it's official.
Oh, well, how this works, man. I got 5 questions. They're all kind of social media, hobby, Vikings related. Ready to take on the high five?
100%.
All right, man. You are Jason777. Like I said, underscore Jason, underscore 777 on Twitter, as well as TikTok and Instagram. Kind of walk us through a little bit, kind of who you feel like you are in the social media world.
That's such a weird question because like a year ago, I wouldn't have ever like thought of myself in that way. It's just been a blessed year in that sense. Yeah, I'm the guy who just yells about the Vikings and posts memes. I think I'm probably most known for I asked the Vikings just as a joke that like totally went unanswered a couple years ago for playoff tickets. And like no one even interacted with the tweet. And then like 2 days later, Delta and them replied and gave my wife and I sideline passes and flew us out. It was like insane. But I also have done a couple like content series during the off seasons with like plays of the day or players of the day, just trying to get if there's one thing about Vikings fans, we don't have a lot to celebrate historically, but we love our nostalgia. And then probably during Vikings games, anytime we get positive yardage, we're winning the Super Bowl. If one thing goes incorrectly, we need to sell the team. So that if you're looking forward just to see an emotional roller coaster of an unstable Vikings fan, follow me on Twitter, I guess.
Simple as that. Now, how did you get kind of going with like using your Twitter as far as your Vikings fandom goes? Did that just kind of happen? Did something specific? Like, what does that come about?
It was just my personal Twitter that like I'm in like high school, and during college, I kind of like I'd say like gained some traction because there was just some inside jokes, and like I created like an account about our campus and stuff. But after that, like I had followed some of the bigger Vikings pages, you know, a lot of like the Vikings news aggregators, things like that. My friend from college told me to follow her cousin because he was a big Vikings fan. And when I followed him, I started getting all the recommendations. And this was like 2.5, 3 years ago. And all of a sudden just started interacting with people. And especially once I noticed like my content was doing pretty well on there, it's just become a Vikings account.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing that I think, I don't know if you follow this, but your engagement is super high when it comes to your tweets.
It's surprising.
You know, a lot of people, a lot of accounts have these bigger followings, but if you look at their engagement, you look at their interactions, it's really doesn't fit the size of their account. But for you, I feel like it matches, if not exceeds it. So I feel like
it's crazy.
Yeah, I really feel like you're doing something right, and you've hit a niche when it comes to a Vikings fandom account, if you will. Because like you said, there are bigger Vikings accounts out there, but I think if you were to look at the engagement versus the following, I mean, yours is probably far beyond what theirs actually is. So I think you found your lane, man, and I'm really encouraged.
Thank you.
I mean, it brought me to you. I mean, that's brought me to you. So, well, let's talk a little bit about the Vikings fandom. Like when you think about you're a Vikings fan, I'm a Vikings fan. Like, who do you credit as kind of bringing you into that Vikings world, bringing you into that Vikings fandom?
Credit or blame? But
fair enough.
Well, no, I'm originally from Southern California. Like we have no Minnesota like heritage in my family.
Yes.
My dad grew up outside the 29 Palms Marine Base and flipped on the TV one day, and it was a Vikings game, and saw Fran Tarkenton, saw the Purple People Eaters, and all the teams in all the NFL. That's become my entire personality. So my dad and I had kind of a complex relationship. He dealt with like substance abuse, things like that. But football and being in California, Dodger baseball, so two very opposite things. Just kind of brought us together. It was kind of like the unifier. He passed away in 2015, so 9 years ago this next Sunday. So the season opener will mark 9 years exactly. And so since then, really, especially with like the Minneapolis Miracle and like all these crazy things that have happened, it's definitely meant more for
Yeah.
some reason. Yeah, it's kind of been, so I definitely put that on him, just him passing that down. I have his Chris Carter Reebok or starter jersey from like the 90s hanging in my closet. So
Yeah, one of those two.
oh, dude, I can't even put that on. That thing is like way, it's like a wedding gown on me.
Oh, man, I can totally relate to that 100%. My dad grew up in that same era. He's from Minnesota. So in the 70s when the Vikings were, I mean, they were in the Super Bowl, 4 out of the 10 years of the decade. Didn't win any, of course. But it's funny how like these simple things of sports can really kind of unite and bring together relationships. And my dad and I talk weekly during the season about the Vikings and things they should do and things they shouldn't do. And
Oh yeah,
but it's really kind of a special thing and a special bond that a team can bring. And you wouldn't think about that. Well, it's just sports; it's a kid's game, but how it can really help you work through some of those trying situations, like maybe the loss of a loved one, which I'm sorry to hear about your dad. But also
appreciate it.
those milestone moments that you can share with each other. So that's pretty special, man. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know when the Vikings win the Super Bowl, suddenly there's going to be a few less therapy appointments set up because this team ties a lot to people's families, things like that, and when they succeed, a lot of people will be
Yes,
happy at least for a bit. So
it's
waiting on
gonna
that to
lift.
happen.
It is gonna lift the shoulders of very, very many people. So,
Yes.
well, let's talk about a little bit about the Vikings for you. I mean, in sports cards, we have our Grail sports card. The card we've always wanted, or the card we have and we'll never let go. But for you, as a Vikings fan and as a Vikings account, like, what is the Grail Vikings moment for you as a fan?
That's tough because there's probably two. I think the easy one's the Minneapolis Miracle,
Hmm.
but that one, I mean, I obviously am so jealous of anyone who was at that game. But I was at a local bar in Scottsdale called Boondocks, and there was like hundreds of Vikings fans, and I was down front and I was wearing. Weirdly enough, my dad's jersey doesn't fit me, but his like starter bomber jacket
Yes,
does.
yes.
So I was rocking that, and like people were asking like, "Where'd you get it?" So I kind of shared the story and everything, and like in that last play, people were like grabbing onto my dad's jacket when we walked it off. That was just like you couldn't. None of that whole situation could have been scripted, but like that part of it also was just so um kind of special.
Yeah.
And then obviously like the opportunity to go out for a playoff game and like be on
Mhm.
the sideline, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
they gave my wife and I gifts, and our unborn baby at the time, like they gave him a bunch of gear.
Yeah.
And like that was so cool. If we would have won, it would have probably taken
Now,
number one.
what game was that?
That was the Giants game, 4th and 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I could tell immediately during that game. I was like, the vibes are a little off. I don't
Yes.
know what's going on. And yeah, definitely they were off. Yeah.
Yes. I think I would have to agree with you. That the Minneapolis Miracle was such like a moment that no one expected to happen, and then it does for us as Vikings fans who have just suffered so much disappointment. I remember when my dad called me. He called me like 2 minutes after the game, after my 2-year-old son was crying because I was yelling so loud in the house,
Been
and
there.
I picked up the phone to my dad, and I was so confident. I said, "Dad, we're going to win the Super Bowl. Like I was so set. I would have bet too much money if I was a gambler
Same.
that we were going to
Well, it
win.
felt like destiny, like with how
Absolutely.
things worked out after losing Bradford and Keenum
Hmm.
stepping up and then hosting the Super Bowl
Yes.
and the whole
Yes.
bring it home
Yeah.
mantra that the team was using.
Mm.
And even weirdly enough, I definitely felt that after the miracle. The moment I felt it the most was the opening drive touchdown
Yes. Rudolph.
after the
Yes.
3 and out in Philly. That changed dramatically. That was
Um,
probably where I was like, "Oh yeah, we definitely got this," and then I was like, "Oh no," for
oh
3 hours.
yes. Yes.
Oh, PTSD, man.
Let's not go back there. Let's not go back there. Well,
Oh yeah,
fourth question here. I know you got a chance to experience Fanatics Fest a couple weeks
yeah.
ago. We do talk a lot about sports cards on the high five, but for you, kind of being a little bit of an outsider looking in, like, how do you feel like sports cards and sports fandom kind of mesh together, experience an event like Fanatics Fest?
Yeah. So I have a few collectibles here and there. Like I have my autographed jersey. I have some cards that a buddy gave me, like a signed an auto Jordan Addison and some
Mhm.
Jefferson cards. Um, I got a chance to talk to Michael Rubin while I was there, and his explanation of the event was he wanted it to be the national meets sports Comic Con.
Yeah.
And when I kind of heard his explanation of that, because I'd seen videos from like the national and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and it's his thought was it's great, but it's just the same exact thing every year.
Yeah.
And the sports Comic Con thing made a lot of sense when I saw like the WWE walkout stage where you could wait in line and come out to your favorite wrestler's
Yeah.
intro and Roger Goodell walking around. It was really, it definitely is something where like I already knew I wanted to get into collecting. I just have to convince my wife to let me have a little budget on it. But to kind of see those things blend, to see like Tom Brady going and going through some of his older cards and
Mhm.
talking about why his autograph changed, things like that. Like
Yeah.
that was really cool because just to see the tangible look on an athlete's face where they found a certain card of
For sure.
theirs and like how cool that was to them. I
Mhm.
think that kind of added that extra layer, but it was awesome. I think they did a great job balancing out like the raw fan experience and the authenticity of like seeing like Logan Paul or Aiden Ross
Yeah.
or Livy Dunn or people like that, Roger Goodell walking through the floor with like the hardcore collectors were there. The Tops booth, they had like limited amounts of like special decks. I forgot exactly. I think it was the Chrome series. We
Okay.
waited in line for those. I bought my buddy his second box. But yeah, Lids had the collectible hats or the limited. I don't know if you saw those. You had mystery 3 packs of hats that were like Ken Griffey signature
Oh
and
wow.
all his stats on the end. I'll send you a video of those.
Yeah.
And then you had a chance to pull like Super Bowl tickets. It was crazy. So it wasn't just cards. They had a lot of different collectibles, but I may or may not have geeked out about some of the Pokemon cards I saw because that was my first collection I
Yes.
ever had growing up. But it was great. I know they're planning on doing one in LA at
Mm.
some point. So it will be a bit of a traveling event. I definitely recommend if you're into collecting or just sports,
Yeah.
go. It's pretty sick.
And that's what I loved about seeing the content from it was, I attended the national, I was a part of it. It's
Mm,
sports cards, wall to wall to wall to wall, with some, autograph spaces as well. But it really seemed like the average fan of a team could go to Fanatics Fest and have a really awesome
mhm.
experience, much like kind of you're speaking to, and still get a little bit of pieces of that sports card collecting
Yep.
world. So I definitely hear what Ruben's saying that it's not trying to be the national, it's trying to be its own thing. And I think there's space for both of those things. But I think it's really cool that sports cards are a part of it. I think that's going to be really neat and maybe bring in some
Yeah.
people who are just average fans to the sports card world.
And I think people forget, like, because the videos online look so cool. This was the first time they've ever done it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this is their first swing. I think it'll only get better. The coolest part of the whole thing was like the celebrities and like the talent
Mm.
is what their badge said hitting the floor. The
Yeah.
only downside is the second people notice them, there would be a stampede, but you
Yeah.
can't really have one without the other. So like, how do
Yes.
you create that like genuine like oh crap, like there's Roger Goodell, there's Allen Iverson, like moment without people getting injured, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
I saw a one girl trip. Luckily I didn't see anything too crazy, but yeah, it was awesome. I definitely had a great time.
Yeah, yeah. All right, man. Well, last question for you here. Obviously, you've seen growth within your social media account based on your fandom, but like, how do you feel like social media has benefited or has a positive impact on the lives of like average sports fans in the sports world?
I mean, I could speak especially to like being an out of state fan for
Hmm.
the Vikings, like being like my main team. You know, there are Vikings bars out here. Arizona has a lot of transplants for college, things like that from the Midwest, Minnesota. Um, but just that connection where like I've built genuine friendships where when I've gone up there, I'll hang out with one of my Twitter friends and it's like we've known each other in person for a while. Like
Sure.
it's just the ability to network and like build relationships. You know, we have a ton of Vikings fans in the UK or
Hmm.
Germany and Europe and talk to a lot of them every day.
Yeah.
So I think just that interconnectivity, that ability to communicate and being Vikings fans, any of us who've been doing this for a while, like we typically think the same way to an extent. You know, we're a tortured group.
Yeah.
So a little bit of that group therapy is good. But I definitely say I think being able to connect to fans of the same team you love throughout
Mhm.
the entire world,
Yeah.
and see their reaction, especially as news breaks or as the game's going on. I think that that's really a unique experience. That's just awesome. It's like being at a game, but just in a different space.
Yeah. It's real time interactions with people who are cheering and rooting for the same team, which I don't think we had that 20 years ago. For me, I
Yeah,
grew up in Washington State, zero Vikings fans in my elementary and middle school. I was it. So giving us that kind of real time interaction when the news breaks that Jefferson signs a contract or Kirk's leaving, like we get to have those instant interactions with people who aren't in our social circle or in our physical social circle, but
hmm,
virtual circle allows us to engage and interact in dialogue in a whole new way. So I think it's a pretty special
100%.
thing. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So what's next for you when it comes to the social media world, man?
Um, we shall see. I mean, I think there's been like some really awesome opportunities. You know, we've been able to start a podcast, myself and my friend I made on Twitter, Brevin Bain, with the Vikes Now network on YouTube. Our show's called the Scotial Network. Proud
Okay,
of that name. Rev
I'll make
came up
sure
with that name. That's a
I'll make
solid
sure to
name.
link. I'll make sure to link and tag
Yeah.
in the description of this too.
Thank you. Things like that. You know, Fanatics Fest was an invite I got being a content creator,
Hmm.
which was just insane. But you know, different opportunities that I just otherwise wouldn't have had. And then we're going out next week for the season opener the season opener Sunday. We're leaving the next day to spend a week out there before the home opener. And just getting to see some of my friends from the content side and make some content together.
Yeah.
That's going to be really fun. There's an event called Skull Fest Saturday night. If
Okay.
anyone's curious, I've shared it on my Twitter. I'll repost it this week.
For sure.
But there's a few, I think probably like 10 to 15 Vikings content creators who are going to be there on a panel and doing appearances. Trying to remember where it's at. It's at a bar right next to US Bank Stadium. But the
Okay.
details I'll share. But those are just opportunities. Like I used to just yell about the Vikings to like it was like yelling into a void because I didn't have a
Hmm.
network of Vikings fans.
Yeah.
I was still doing it. Now I'm just doing it and people relate to it. So um yeah, we'll see. I mean, this is definitely something currently I'm a sales coach, but I would love to do this full time. I've seen, you know, I went from like 600 to over 6,000 followers in a little more than a year.
Yeah.
Obviously, still have a lot of growth I need
Mhm.
to have if I want to make this a sustainable thing for myself and my family. But um, it's definitely felt more possible than it ever has in the past.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I've enjoyed, getting in early on the journey, and I'll enjoy continue seeing
Thanks,
it.
man.
One final question for you. Make your prediction, man. How are our Vikings gonna fare this season, 2024, 2025?
I have to be consistent and stick with what I had on our episode of Scotial this week and say 8-9. I think
Okay.
it's not for lack of desire for more. It's just, or the fact that I don't think things could go worse.
Mm,
I have no idea what to expect. Sam Darnold or the cornerback room,
yeah.
just too many. So I'm going with trusting what Kevin O'Connell did without Kirk last year. Can he
Mm.
do something similar with Darnold and keep us competitive? I'd say 8-9.
All right, fair enough, man. I'm shooting a little bit higher than that myself because I'm calling Darnold Keenum 2.0. I think he's going to come out there and blast it
Dude, I'm hoping.
yep,
Trust
yep,
me.
yep.
I'm hoping, but
Of course, man. We are Vikings fans. We are
oh,
hopeful from the get go, man. So
after McCarthy's injury, I got so sad. I just had to like
mm.
temper my expectations. So everything from here is pure upside.
I
That's
agree.
how I'm going into it.
100%. It's the Dobbs effect, man. I mean, at that point, it was just like whatever happens, happens, and that
Oh
was
yeah.
fantastic content, by the way, that you put out during Dobbs Mania. So
Thanks, man. Yeah, that was a
I'm
fun
hoping for a
couple
longer
weeks.
stretch with Darnold. I want a longer stretch of content with Darnold.
Sammy Darts. Let's see what he's got. I'm hoping, man. Just no ghosts this time. That's all I'm hoping, dude.
All right, my friend, we cleared the high five. Let's throw it up high five at the end. Boom, we got it. You can follow Jason on Twitter underscore or at underscore Jason underscore 777, as well as on Instagram and TikTok at Jason777. And then what was the YouTube channel again?
Yeah, Vikes Now. So Dust Baker, for any of your Vikings fans have probably seen some of his content before. He runs the network Vikes Now and is kind enough to have Brev and I have our show. Currently, it's a weekly show, but for the season, we're going to try to do at least 2 or 3 times a week. So the show on there will be the Scotial Network, which you can see. If you go to the Vikes Now page, you'll see a split off for Scotial Network.
Awesome. Social Network. I'll make sure to tag that in the description. Make sure you sub to that channel as well. Also, subscribe to the channel, DZW1, K-Dubs High Five. Follow me on Twitter or X at Mr. K-Dubs. Shout out to our High Five endorsers, Midwest Box Breaks, and LJ's Card Shop. Jason, I love having a brother in the struggle, man. So keep doing you, man. It's awesome. And
We're in there.
yeah, absolutely.
Skull. Appreciate it, man.
All right, y'all take care. We'll catch you next time on the next High Five.